Hey everyone, I'm Steven from Expedit, and I'm here today to do a negotiation role play. Today we're here with Craig, who's a negotiation expert. Craig, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I started out as a PM at Microsoft and worked at a number of startups. I had my own startups, and now I've been doing salary and compensation negotiation for execs in the tech industry for over a decade.
Yeah, and so for those of you watching, we know how stressful negotiations can be. You don't know what to say, you want to get a higher salary or fairly compensated for your worth. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to show you an actual role play. So I'm going to pretend to be a recruiter, Craig is going to pretend to be a candidate. We're going to show you what it would look like to be a successful negotiator and getting a higher salary. And hopefully, this video helps folks who are nervous to get familiar with what actually gets talked about in a negotiation. But also, if you're looking to level up your negotiation or know what to say in certain moments, hopefully, it'll be really helpful. Today, we're going to focus on the salary expectations conversation. So, this is often earlier on in someone's recruiting journey where a recruiter will call you and say, "Hey, I would like just to know your salary expectations." So we'll see how Craig handles this scenario. Um, hey, Craig. This is Steven. I'm a recruiter here at AI Co. I'm super, super excited to be working with you. And, you've been doing well in the interview so far. And
Appreciate
before
that.
you get to the next couple rounds, yeah, it's been great. Before we get to the next couple rounds, I just wanted to check in and make sure we had the right expectations. Would you mind just sharing, what your salary expectations are?
Sure. I'm happy to talk about compensation. I'm sorry, just so I can kind of get a clarification there. I've been through one round. It was a full round. Are there multiple other rounds? Like, how's the rest of the process going to go?
Yeah, so you've done a great job on the recruiter screening and some of the initial kind of interviews. We have one final interview that we do with the CEO of AI Co. So we're excited to push you onto that stage very soon.
Got it.
But before we do that, you're getting really close to the offer, and we just want to know we don't want to waste the CEO's time, and so just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Totally. Absolutely. I think, we should definitely talk about compensation. I still, definitely want to learn a little bit more about the role. I had a good chance to answer a lot of the questions from the team during the interview process, but I still have a few questions myself because we kind of ran out of time in a number of the interviews. Happy to circle back once I know kind of for sure that this is the right fit. Would love to circle back and talk about compensation and expectations and stuff like that.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions about the role. Is there something specific you wanted me to answer so that I can get you um, comfort around knowing what your expectations are? Or I just would love to, leave this call making sure we're on the same page with
Yeah,
yeah.
there are a number of things I'm excited about that were talked about in the interview process. They talked about expanding the team, just so I can understand like how much headcount is on the team that's going to be expanded to this year. They said the team was growing.
Yeah, so we're planning on adding at least 10 new roles to the team that you're going to be working with. So yeah, we are planning on growing really quickly, which is a really exciting opportunity.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then you're the expert when it comes to compensation and stuff at the company. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you guys balance equity versus things like bonuses and base compensation?
Yeah. Well, we always try to make sure it works for the employee or the person working at the company. One thing that would actually be really helpful for me as I think about, what that would look like for you is if you have any expectations about your equity and salary compensation. Do you have any kind of
Yeah.
expectations?
Oh, honestly, in terms of, I still feel pretty nascent in the process. I don't have a specific number for you if that's what you're asking, but like I just want to make sure that I understand a little bit more. My experience has been that each company, even with the same title, and you've probably seen this yourself, even with the same title, people have widely different responsibilities and roles, and then how they structure compensation is totally different. So I'm just curious, like do you guys like, for example, have you had bonuses as part of the yearly review cycle, or do you do sign-on bonuses? Like, how does the company think about things that are outside of just base salary?
That's a great question. Yeah, we do performance bonuses every year. And yeah, to answer your earlier question, we usually the way we think about equity is we try to give equity refreshes every year and a 4-year vest with a 1-year cliff. And we try to make it commensurate with the base salary or we sometimes give a couple options so that people can adjust their base salary if they want more or less equity with the company.
Got it.
Um, yeah.
And for this role specifically, do you have like a salary band that you've already determined that you want to be within?
Yeah, so California legally requires us to post that, and so our salary band is 135 to 150K
Got
for
it.
the
Got
role.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, obviously like there's, uh, equity on top of that and whatever bonus structure, et cetera.
That's correct. Yes, there's equity on top of that and the bonus structure, and we have a lot of benefits. And working at AI Co is just a dream. So it's also really exciting just to be at a company with a culture like this too. Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah,
in terms of the annual bonuses and that sort of thing, do you have a set target amount that the company tries to like sometimes companies are like, okay, we do a 25% bonus and we do it based on company performance and that sort of thing. Is that the case here?
yeah. So we do a target 20% bonus, and then if there's performance exceeding performance, we would give 25%. And if it's below performance, sometimes we go lower than the 20%. But it's target 20% bonus year over year if you're performing in your role.
Okay, great. That's super helpful to know. I'd love, I want to definitely just to let you know this is at the top of my stack. I am very interested in trying to figure out whether this will work for both of us. Um, if we can like set up, actually, why don't I just hold on one second? Let me pull up my calendar. Give me a second. Next week, like I'm pretty open in the mornings, Monday through Wednesday. So like if we want to just like bat it back and forth over email and see what is available um for the CEO to meet. And then I would love a chance to talk to the hiring manager again. We got like a good amount of time, but it was mostly him asking me questions, and I'd love a chance to kind of ask him a little bit more about his managing style, etc. So if we could
Absolutely, yeah.
jump into, we can figure it out over email, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I want to make sure you're feeling really excited about working at this company. So yeah, I'll schedule those things with you now. I think Monday at 10 a.m. PT would work, so we can go
Okay,
ahead and put that in the books. And then I'll get that hiring manager schedule call with you really soon.
great.
But before I go, just one last, just ask like, do you have a minimum salary requirement? I would love to just get a sense to make sure we're on the same
So
page.
sorry, is it minimum like in the least that
Yeah, like a minimum, like this would, like,
yeah.
yeah,
I honestly have not. I don't have an actual number to give you. I mean, I am still kind of figuring things out as far as what's competitive in the market, and then honestly, I just want to hear what you guys, your compensation better, packages better than anybody, and so I just want to hear what you have to offer, and then I feel really confident that if we feel like this is a good match from a role and responsibility level, like we'll come to something that is agreeable for both of us. I don't see
great.
a problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Craig, for taking the time, and looking forward to having you move forward in the interview. And yeah, we'll be in touch really soon.
for sure. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. We can take off our role play
No.
hat. You did great. That was really good. I'll share a couple thoughts of like what I noticed that you did really well, and then
Yeah,
I'd love to hear your thoughts
great.
or like kind of what your strategy was. As a recruiter, you did an excellent job of changing the power dynamic of the call away from me, where I was asking a lot of questions. I was like, basically, I was in this call trying to get a number from you,
Yeah.
and I did not succeed in getting a number from you. Um, and the reason that, like, for folks watching, the reason that recruiters do that is because then I can maybe adjust the salary lower to match your expectations. So if I had heard you say your target salary was 130, then
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to give you 135, which is the low end of the range.
Yeah.
And it also, even if you had said 150, maybe there was an opportunity that I could have gone higher, and I capped you at that number.
Right.
So I think you did an excellent job of just not saying the number. I thought you were also very kind. You were like, oh, this is the top of my stack. Like, I'm really curious. Like, you even went to schedule a call. You're like, I want to move this forward. Um, but you were also just like, I don't know. I don't have enough information about the role to be able to make that decision. And then, yeah, I think in terms of what I loved that you also did in the call is that I was coming in asking you a lot of questions.
Mhm.
And then you kind of turned the tables and were like, actually, like, this is an opportunity for me to get to know the company, for me to understand the performance, the bonuses, and all these kinds of things. So those are just some of the reflections that I had, but I'd be curious what was going on in your head or your
Hey.
strategy for the call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few things you said there that I was purposely doing. One, I'll just note that like so often when people are talking about their compensation, you get kind of tight and you're like, oh, people said that I shouldn't say anything, so they end up being unfriendly. And I think that
Mm,
tone is so important. I mean, it's one thing to not give a number. It's another thing to do it in a very abrupt or brash, kind of crass way. And so I was attempting to just be like really straightforward with you when it comes to like, oh, I just don't know, which is true. Like I don't know what like my minimum salary requirement. I like, yes, I don't want to answer that question, but also, what does that even mean? The least amount that you're gonna possibly pay, like, I don't know what that number is. And so
Mm.
I want to be super straightforward and honest and about that. Like if you are trying to like curb the question and just like redirect without actually answering it, it can be a little frustrating. So I think that tone and like friendliness that's coming forward is purposeful. I'm not that's not just by chance. And then you said the like not saying the number. Yeah, so I didn't say the number. I definitely took the opportunity to get information from you. So I learned, what the bonus structure was, that you have bonuses. I learned a little bit more about the equity package. Like if this was a real company that we were interviewing for and I had done like specific research, I might have had more specific questions. And like also in a role play, I don't have the backstory of what actually happened in the interview. If I did, I would have come up with specific things from the interview, not generalizations. So
Mm.
there are a lot of places that you can go in a conversation, and you don't have to take a backseat and just answer questions like you're taking a test. Instead, make it a collaborative conversation where you are actually, not just asking questions to ask a question, but actually asking questions that are interesting and useful to you.
Totally. Yeah, I loved that you were doing that. And I think there's also some aspect of like, I left the conversation to your point of tone, like I left the conversation feeling like good or like feeling like, oh, like Craig is collaborating and like friendly and all that stuff, which I think is just such a misnomer when people think of negotiation, where they're like, yeah, like as you said, oh, I'm stiff and uptight, but it's like, oh, actually, like you were pretty reasonable, open, collaborative, but you also set your boundaries of like, I'm not can't share this thing that you're really wanting from me.
Yeah. I also
Yeah.
didn't, like, I didn't like say like people don't like to hear the word no. And so
Mm,
I just gave like, I'm not quite sure what that thing is. I tried to be a little bit aside that, be able to say no without actually saying no to somebody is actually a really important skill there. Yeah. And I think that there are lots of pathways um, to asking questions and opening up the conversation. One of the things that I'm able to be more comfortable and focus on my tone and stuff like that is because I have some prep, right? Like
mm,
I was ready for this call, and you should absolutely not pick up the phone for a recruiter until you know that you're ready for the conversation. I often tell my
mm.
clients like, if a recruiter calls you and it's a surprise, don't answer the phone. Take a second, right? Breathe for a second, bring up your notes, bring up whatever prep you've done, then call them back. Like there's nothing that says that you should be on their timeline. You can very easily be on your timeline. Give it 10 minutes, call them back. There's no problem with that.
Totally, yeah. And I feel like there's one that's like a big theme in these kind of conversations is the power dynamic of like there's sort of this pressure. It feels like, oh, I have to respond to them, I have to blah blah blah. But it's like actually you have just as much stake in this, and it's like they need to respond to you when you have questions
Totally.
and things like that. So I loved how at the end you were like, oh, I want to talk to the hiring manager, and it's
Yeah.
sort of like, okay, like whoa, like yeah, like you need to decide if you want to be with us just as much as we need to decide if we want to be with you.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think, also going at it like, "Hey, I'm curious about this because we didn't get a chance," as opposed to like, any sort of thing that feels like a demand. And
mm,
the last thing I'll note also is that I was the one that closed the conversation. So where people can get into
mm.
a tough spot here is where they don't know how to end the conversation. So I did what I
Mm,
call a move to logistics, and this means where I literally opened up the tab with my calendar and I looked on, I made space in the conversation to do something that was pragmatic. I looked at my calendar. So if I had my phone out, I would literally pick up my phone, go to the calendar app,
huh.
and not fake it. Don't fake it. Just actually do it and say, okay. And then you're planning for the next time to engage. That gives the other person both reassurance that you are going to engage again. So there's not tension around, oh, I don't know when they're going to call me back or email me back. And also, it moves you out of the content of the conversation and into logistics. You actually did something that most people would not do, which is to like try to go back. But you can feel that there's a natural evolution to the conversation moving towards a close.
Totally.
It's difficult to go back. So that'll
Yeah.
rarely happen. But even if it does, like even after you did it, the conversation's over. Like we're no
Yeah.
longer in Never Never Land, talking about whatever. So
Well,
how
it
do you
was
solve
funny
that?
because you did that so well, and that I felt pressure to say this is my last question. So like,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I had said that, I was like, oh, well, just one more thing. And then I could
yeah.
tell it was like closing in on me. So I was like losing my opportunity to like say more. And that was really skillful too. Yeah, like move to, sorry, what did you call it? Move to
I call it a move to
logistics.
logistics. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's really great because it just really like kind of narrows the conversation a little bit, and it you took control of like, hey, I'm like kind of done with this conversation, and let's
yeah,
move on because it was kind of clear at some point it's not making getting us anywhere really.
yeah.
Yeah.
I consider a move to logistics a version of an endpoint, like where you
Mm,
are somehow closing either the conversation or whatever you're saying. We can do another video all about endpoints, but it's important to like the structure of the conversation is important as well, right? We got in, we said certain niceties, which sometimes will like be a little bit more verbose in an actual setting where you're talking about the interview and how you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Then we got into the content of the conversation, and then we closed it out. And knowing where I am in the conversation is important. So probably a topic for
mm.
another day, but I knew where I was going, and that is important. Then you don't end up just anywhere, and you end up saying things just because your mouth's open and you're you're moving forward with the conversation.
Totally. I have one last
Yeah,
question that a lot of people kind of ask that I'd love to hear your thoughts on that are related to this, which is sometimes people ask, "Hey, like, can I just do this all over email? Because I'm really nervous." You know, a lot of
mm,
people watching are like, "Oh my gosh, like, I don't want to take up the phone. Can I just keep saying like, oh, I'll email you back, or I'll email you back?" Like, is that an okay
yeah.
strategy? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to say that it's not an okay strategy because one, a lot of people do it, and it is a way to communicate. I think that if you're choosing email or text or any sort of written communication, you're choosing the least effective way to change the other person's mind. And the reason is
Mm,
that one, when we write things down, people get a little bit more attached to them. So that goes same thing as like somebody gives you a written offer. It's good to deal with the verbal offer and do all the negotiation there before, like, sometimes they're going to write it down anyhow, and that's fine, but like if you can just do the negotiation before it's written down, sometimes people get a little bit less attached when they haven't written something down. The other thing about email is that we're not really affected by written communication in the same way that we're affected by a person. And even if you are affected by the perfect email, it's because you're imagining the other person behind it. So you just imagine
mm,
if somebody wrote you the perfect negotiation email, but it was written by an AI and you knew that, you're not you're not convinced at all. And so I would urge people to, if you can prep, and if you have, the coaching, for example, that you guys are offering, if you have enough of a prep and you know what you're doing in a conversation like this, and you're taking advice from this video, really try to do the negotiation or over Zoom, on the phone where you can have your notes up and you can have a conversation with a human, because ultimately we are persuaded by people, not by paper.
yeah, I think that's a really good point, and also to your point around tone, it's like a different vibe to be emailing someone all these things and versus kind of like I think calling you today for the role play, it felt a little bit more like, oh, he's like trying to make it work or excited.
Yeah.
I can get things that I can't get over email. Yeah.
That's a good point on, when somebody opens up a text or an email, you have no control over whether their partner just screamed at them, their kids crying, they just got bad news from their boss. Like, you have no control over the context. And so you can't modify things in that way. And you can't come across in the tone
Mm,
that you want. So it's very, very easy to get misinterpreted. I think email should be used for logistics mainly, and or organizing how the conversation is going to go, and any follow up that it just reaffirms what you had talked about.
mm,
Ideally,
mm.
that's where email, and always be overly positive in written text.
For sure.
Yeah,
Okay, well, I'll close this out here. Well, Craig, it was really awesome having you.
certainly.
If there's anything else that you'd like to share, advice or any tips or reflections or anything more about you, but on our side, it was really awesome having you. Again, I'm Steve from Exponent.
Yeah,
Yeah, Craig, do you
we'll
have
put some
anything?
links
Yeah,
down in the text of like how you can find me and stuff like that.
awesome. Yeah, and for folks interested, yeah, we'll put all the links and descriptions about Craig if you're interested in more advice like this with his content and coaching and stuff like that too. For folks watching, also, good luck if you have an upcoming negotiation. I know it feels really hard and stressful, but hopefully this video helped make it a little bit easier. Thank you.